Do you believe that you can heal yourself? Too often we give our power away to something outside of ourselves, and rarely, if ever, trust and tap into our innate healing power and intuition. Everyone has this capability to heal in ways we never thought possible. It's your sovereign right to claim and have true health and lasting wellness. Now, here is the host of the Dr. Dolores Show, Dr. Dolores Fazzino, nurse practitioner, medical intuitive, and energy whisperer.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in our wonderful world. I'm Dr. Dolores Fazzino, nurse practitioner, medical intuitive, and energy whisperer. And you're listening to the Dr. Dolores Show on Inspired Choices Network. So, welcome, everybody. Today we're talking about a subject that kind of came into my mind probably about a month or so ago, and it's called Solving Hidden Grief, the Path to Healing. So often in our lives, we experience tragedies, maybe deaths, maybe even good things too. And, we are going through our energetic processes and trying to experience our emotions, or maybe we don't, or we partially experience them. And the energy of that emotion is still trapped within our energy field. And over time and decades, it kind of festers and is there. And it's kind of running the show on a subconscious level, because we don't have any awareness of it, but it's definitely impacting our lives. And, for a lot of people, this may be on the edges of, scratching your mind like, what the heck is she talking about? But let me share something with you, because I feel that what's happening in our world right now is, even though it appears to be not so pleasant, um, sad, it's actually triggered a lot of things in people, even though they're not directly related to what is going on. It has impacted them in some way, shape, or form. In our current states of what's going on in the world, I think we could really agree with that. I know for me, those events have really triggered some deep-seated things that I probably hadn't given much thought to, not only in a few decades, but many decades. I'm talking like close to 60 years. Yes, I look good for my age. I was, no, I'm going to be turning 65 this coming spring, and I know for me, some of these events have been really triggering me on a very deep level. So, since I'm a person that walks my talk, and I believe in that because I think we all are works in progress, and we have to remember that it's not a one and done, and you don't get a bypass. I wish we could, but we don't get a bypass to get to where we need to go. It's all part of our growth experience. So for me recently, I had the sad news of a colleague of mine that took his own life. And even though I didn't know him personally, it affected me to my core. I can't even begin to share with you the depth of heartbreak that I experienced with finding out about this instance. And over the next several weeks of that news, I kept getting those deep reflections of and flashbacks of things that happened when I was probably, between the ages of 3 and 5. And I know one thing in particular that really stood out was that, I think I was about 4 or 5 when my father's grandmother passed away. And that was my great grandmother. And, I knew her as this very frail elderly woman who was bedridden. And she was probably in her late 90s when she transitioned. And yet, when my father picked me up to share with me what, has happened and that he's going to the funeral, I busted out crying. And he couldn't understand. Well, I think for my father, he really didn't know how to deal with that, and his automatic response was stop crying. And for a little kid, when you hear that and you're trying to experience your sadness, and you stop crying, it's just like I stuffed that internally, and I've been carrying it around for close to 60 years. 60 years. So for me to be able to go back to that and look at that situation with the adult eyes that I now currently have, my poor father, he didn't know how to handle his own grief with the situation. So it allowed me to see things from a different perspective, and to, do some forgiveness work in regards to that, but also to be able to give myself the grace and self compassion to know that it's okay to feel those things. And I sobbed like a baby, like you can never imagine. It was those deep seated sobs that never were experienced when I was a younger version of myself at age 4 and 5. But yet I got to experience that and heal that and put it into the right perspective, gain the wisdom and the knowledge from that. And I could tell you this, that my life has really shifted and changed in a real positive way because of that. So these are like little things to ponder, because a lot of times, we don't know how things are interconnected in the world, okay? We have this illusion that A plus B equals C, and everything is like in little boxes and you combine the boxes. But I have news for you. What I know in my heart of hearts is that we live in a matrix. Things are interconnected in ways and means that you have no idea. And when you are allowing yourself to go to those deep, dark places, call it the shadow side, individually, I feel that this also impacts what goes out into collective consciousness as well. When you're able to see things and connect the dots, even though it may not make logical sense because we've been programmed to think that, everything has to be logical. Well, newsflash, it's not. It really isn't. Sometimes it makes no sense at all, but it's the truth and it's the way things are. So I just invite you to kind of ponder with this. And if you have things that are kind of coming up in your life where you're feeling like you're being externally triggered, and it's uncomfortable, and you may not be directly involved with it, but it's really impacting you, I invite you to just go a little deeper within yourself and just feel what that is. And you may get some gold nuggets and some really amazing healing opportunities that can truly shift you and your perspective on things, but also you gain some wisdom and you're able to energetically help shift our consciousness as well. So I really think the episode, that my friend created for himself, and I really truly honor, whatever he was going through that allowed me to go to a deep level to heal what I needed to heal for me in order to move forward with my life. So sometimes things are not as they seem. Remember that. Just because we are going through major stuff doesn't mean it's the end of the world. Just be more curious. And, going deeper takes courage and bravery. And I really feel that you are worth it. If it's going to encourage you to upgrade yourself to a better version of yourself, by all means, let's bring it on. It's like it's time. It's time to really look at those dark places that have been unconscious for, in my case, for over 60 years that have been running the show. What a gift you could give yourself, especially we're at the time of the holidays here. Instead of, trying to figure out what other people need, give this gift to yourself, because it is the most liberating thing. And I'm speaking from my own experience with this. So, we talk about hidden grief, and I just want to share a little bit more about that because, you know, I shared one example of what that was all about. But, grief is a complex emotion, as we know, and sometimes it remains so buried within ourselves. It's unprocessed and unresolved, casting a shadow on our lives. Its presence can be insidious and affecting our relationships, our happiness, and even our physical well-being. So, knowing this, it could be things that have happened in another place and time in this lifetime that you've experienced personally, or it could be from another place and time in another lifetime, and it might be a carryover from a previous lifetime into this lifetime as well. Whatever it is, it's hidden grief that really would be beneficial to experience. Recently, I had another colleague of mine approach me and shared some news about some of his health challenges, and immediately I felt this whole inner grief, or this hidden inner grief that was still running the show. I feel that maybe the timing is right for this, where we are in our evolution in humanity, that many people are experiencing maybe a health challenge, or they've been, you know, stuff has happened. It's almost as if there's this collective triggering that's occurring, so people could shake and wake up and look at things in a different perspective, so they could get the deep healing and the lasting health and wellness that they truly desire. So, when we're getting ready to go on a break very shortly, but what we're going to talk about when we come back is, maybe some, talking about PTSD and how that affects things, and, is hidden grief like PTSD? Well, maybe it is. We're going to talk more about that when we come back. But, it's something to think about in the areas of your life where you've had some challenges, or, what, the old triggering thing is coming up, either by the global events that are happening, or even like the real personal in your face type of things with another person. Whatever that is, I encourage you just to make a mental note of that, but also to take a deeper dive into that, just to be go on an archaeological dig and an exploration without judging or criticizing it. I think that's the most important thing. But just be curious like a little child, the innocence that we all have when we are born, before we get tainted by our world. Just be curious and explore, and don't be afraid to go into those places, because let me tell you, those nuggets that are there are so worth it. It'll I will put money on the fact that this will enrich your life in ways you have no idea, but it's going to allow you and catapult you to where you need to go on your life's journey. So you've been listening to the Dr. Dolores Fazzino Show. I'm Dr. Dolores Fazzino, nurse practitioner, medical intuitive, and energy whisperer. And we've been talking about solving hidden grief, the path to healing. So when we come back, we'll share some more tips that you could use to assist you on your journey to solving your hidden grief that you hold. Talk to you when we get back.
Do you trust your instincts? Many of us don't. Yet this is the key to connecting to your innate healer within and your intuition. Tune in to the Dr. Dolores Show with nurse practitioner, medical intuitive, and energy whisperer, Dr. Dolores Fazzino, to receive insights and tools to realign with your inner wisdom for lasting health and true wellness. Listen for the Dr. Dolores Show, Wednesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central, 1 p.m. Mountain, 12 p.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message, the world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email become a host at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com.
This is the Dr. Dolores Show with Dr. Dolores Fazzino, nurse practitioner, medical intuitive, and energy whisperer. To participate in the program, join the live studio audience in our chat room at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com. You can also send an email to Dolores at drdoloresfazzino.com. Now, back to the program.
Well, welcome back, everybody. You're listening to the Dr. Dolores Show on Inspired Choices Network, and we are talking about solving hidden grief, the path to healing. And before we, completed our first segment, before we went on break, we were talking about those things that happen in our world, but also in our personal life that are triggers, but they are gold nuggets to allow you to get to a deeper aspect of yourself and do some deep-seated healing of things that probably you've been carrying around for decades. And in my case, I shared the story of my own healing journey something that happened close to 60 years ago in my life that I was able to shift and heal. And it's just rocked my world in a real, amazing, positive way. So, we're back here and we're talking about hidden grief. And, I think some people, are uncomfortable with that. Yes, it is. It's like when we have to go in and kind of feel, it just really raises the hair on people's backs and the back of their neck and maybe their head as well, where it's just this very uncomfortable thing because I believe that we've been programmed in our society that it's not okay to feel, and grieving is part of feeling at the depths of our beingness. So, let's make a vow that we're going to shift and change that, because experiencing emotions needs to be the new secret sauce in society. And I invite you to make it your own secret sauce so you could have the most enriching life that you have signed up for in this lifetime. It's really interesting because I don't know if anybody in my audience ever gets, has decks of cards where, you shuffle them up and you pick out the card for the day. Well, I had to share this. I pulled a card from Matt Hughes Dreamscape Oracle, and I'm going to show you this right here. It's very beautiful. And interestingly enough, for today's show, I thought this was appropriate. It talks about the shadow. And what it says here, I'm just going to read a little bit because I really think this is so aligned with what we're doing today. It says, the shadow, Gaia pulls the veil of the universe high into the heavens to reveal the line of the moon spinning down the Milky Way, from the dark to full and back again. Her action turns, giving us the time to delineate between the waking moments and the dreamlike states that murmur into our ears. The shadow phase of the moon provides us with the perspective to see clearly. Use this time to discern reality from imagination. When the planet is in its shadow phase, which it has been, it is in a powerfully magical time that allows us to see. It is an honor to gain access to the dreams of the universe. Use this time wisely. So I feel that card is so appropriate for what is happening in our world today, but also for the topic of our show. We are digging deeper into the shadows of us, the darker places where they've been unconscious. And what we mean by dark, it's just basically unconscious. They're running the show. When they're unconscious, there's no awareness of that. When we are waking up and becoming more evolved, we've been sleeping for a while in our lifetime and something happens and triggers us and we wake up and we're waking up and then we get to a phase where we're awoken. When you're in that awakening phase, could be a real interesting place because it's like you have this information, things are happening in your world, and you're like, now what? Now what do I do with this? I have no reference point for anything because what I had been doing before, like maybe been on automatic because you've been unconscious, is no longer working because you're aware of this condition or whatever's going on. And it's making it a little more challenging for you to move forward. But see, that's the illusion. Sometimes we are given these opportunities, these triggers to allow us to go deeper, to uncover the dirt on things and see the precious stones and the precious essence of what that situation is teaching us. Grief is one of those things. Things to remember too, external triggers could be, events that are happening in the world on a global essence, or even as individual as anniversaries of deaths, of tragedies, holidays, specific places that you've been, objects, smells, and even interactions with others who remind the person of the loss. These triggers can evoke memories and emotions associated with the loss, prompting individuals to confront and process their grief. What a gift to be able to do that, to finally process the grief that you've been holding on for a long time. And this grief has been running the show on an unconscious level in your life. So, people often wonder too, is grief kind of similar to, or hidden griefs kind of similar to PTSD? You know what? They're related in some ways. They both have emotional responses to difficult situations and experiences, but they have distinct concepts. Okay. And let's just talk about grief here as the definition of grief. It's a natural emotional response to a loss, which can include a death of a loved one, the end of a significant relationship, or major life changes, or even experiencing major trauma in the world. It is a process that people go through to come to terms and adjust with a new reality created by the loss. Grief never goes away, it just continues to evolve into something different. It's like it becomes the new normal. While grief can be intense and may involve a range of emotions, it's generally considered a normal and healthy response to a loss. Now, PTSD, on the other hand, is a mental condition that can develop after a person has experienced a traumatic event. Well, you know what? A loss can be a traumatic event. So I'm going to beg to differ on this. Traumatic events can include not only death, but also situations involving serious harm, threat of death, or sexual violence. PTSD involves symptoms such as intrusive thoughts, flashbacks, nightmares, hypervigilance, avoidance, and reminders of the trauma. PTSD is diagnosed with these symptoms when these symptoms persist for an extended period, typically more than a month, and significantly interfere with a person's daily function. So I kind of see where, we come from with the whole thing of grief and PTSD, but I intuitively feel that they're both related. And episodes of PTSD can actually could be triggers of hidden grief that is still part of you from another place and time. So maybe the PTSD is like a trigger to allow you to go deeper to something that's really deep within you. And maybe by healing what that deeper aspect is, allows you to move through whatever's the trigger PTSD thing to a better place and time. It's almost like, I wouldn't say wrapping it up in a box and putting it away. It's about integrating that in with what is happening with you. While grief and PTSD share some symptoms such as intrusive thoughts and emotional distress, they differ in terms of their duration, cause, and nature. Well, yes and no. If something's happening, all of a sudden it's triggered you, I always feel that there's no mistakes. Invite yourself to be brave enough to just sit with that and go deeper. Go deeper as to, ask the question to yourself, why is that so? Why am I being so why am I responding to this, and what is happening with that? When you're able to move through this, you know, like I said, amazing things are going to start manifesting, because what had been weighing you down energetically, and remember, everything is energy, the hidden grief is energy. Once you're able to experience that, heal that up, and move forward, it's like it creates a vacuum for more and more amazing things to come in of your choosing. Okay. It's like clearing out, you know, an old closet with a lot of stuff that you no longer need. Once you purge that out, you have a new clean space, so you could put what you choose in of your liking into that new closet. It allows people to have more creativity and more connectedness to themselves. It's also like a shamanic way of calling back parts of yourself that have been lost in another place and time. Too often, things happen to us when we're younger, or, we experience things and part of our soul gets broken off and stuck in that time and place. And remember, a lot of this is happening on an unconscious level. We aren't aware of this until one day we may wake up and we become aware of this. This is where all the wonderful wisdom and tools that you've learned throughout your journey come into play, and you're allowed to go back and look at that from a witness versus as a experiencing it again. And you could see what was really playing out to assist you to move forward. I think the most important thing to remember is just to have a lot of compassion for yourself. Allow yourself grace, because you know what? We're just learning. And a lot of times we are totally unaware. And just remember, the people who maybe have done things to us, or they're unaware too. They're doing the best they can with what they know, and if they're unaware and they have no idea. So when you're able to look at it from that perspective, looking down on the situation and seeing how everything kind of interplays, it's mind-boggling when you're able to see that and experience that. So we've been talking about hidden grief and how we can move through that, and some things that you could do about that. You've been listening to the Dr. Dolores Show. I'm Dr. Dolores Fazzino, nurse practitioner, medical intuitive, and energy whisperer, and we're on the Inspired Choices Network. And when we come back from our next break, we're going to be talking about how hidden grief can contribute to health challenges and your overall well-being. So stay tuned, and if you're online, please hop on, and we'd love to hear from you. And we will talk to you when we come back from our break.
Do you trust your instincts? Many of us don't. Yet this is the key to connecting to your innate healer within and your intuition. Tune in to the Dr. Dolores Show with nurse practitioner, medical intuitive, and energy whisperer, Dr. Dolores Fazzino, to receive insights and tools to realign with your inner wisdom for lasting health and true wellness. Listen for the Dr. Dolores Show, Wednesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central, 1 p.m. Mountain, 12 p.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
How wonderful would it be to carry your favorite Inspired Choices Network host with you throughout your day? Well, now you can. Inspired Choices Network now has its very own mobile app. Our free app offers live streaming shows, along with thousands of podcasts and TV episodes. Our shows cover a wide variety of topics. Whether you're waking up with us, carrying us through the day, and taking us to bed with you, we're always here for you to enjoy. We're easy to find. Just search for Inspired Choices Network in the Apple App Store or Google Play Store.
This is the Dr. Dolores Show with Dr. Dolores Fazzino, nurse practitioner, medical intuitive, and energy whisperer. To participate in the program, join the live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also send an email to Dolores at drdoloresfazzino.com. Now, back to the program.
Well, welcome back, everybody. You're listening to the Dr. Dolores Show, and I'm Dr. Dolores Fazzino, nurse practitioner, medical intuitive, and energy whisperer. And we've been talking about hidden grief and how you could heal from that. In our world today, we kind of shared earlier in the other segments about some of the triggers that are happening globally that maybe we are not directly involved with, yet it affects us. And we've also talked about PTSD and hidden grief and how the two may or may not be kind of interconnected. But I think the most important thing that we really need to look at here is how hidden grief can contribute to your overall health and well-being. When we have grief that is trapped in our body, or what we call hidden grief, that has not been fully experienced, overall it adds a stressor to our body. It could weaken our immune system and makes you more susceptible to illnesses and infections. It can exacerbate or contribute to chronic pain, believe it or not. And it also could challenge our mental health as well too. There's an increased risk of having mental health disorders. It affects your sleep and overall wellness. And when your sleep is affected, guess what? You're not getting the adequate amount of rest that you should be getting. When you don't have enough sleep, it has a tendency to lower your immune system. It also has the capability to, just interfere with a lot of things. And Sarah's piping in here. Can you carry hidden grief from past lives? Absolutely. Absolutely. And, it might be, maybe you had another time and place where, you experienced, you know, being in a war, being persecuted, being punished, whatever, maybe something that's mimicking what we're seeing now in our world in another part of the world, like in the Middle East. Even though you directly don't have anything to do, you're not dealing with it in this lifetime directly, but indirectly in another past life, directly you have something that's very similar to what you had experienced, something similar to what is happening in present day time here. Okay. And let me, elaborate on that a little bit, because I think that's a valid thing that people need to understand a little better. When we are here in our bodies and we are on a timeline, we have this illusion in our world that past, present, and future are horizontal, but they really aren't, because time is an illusion here on the earth plane. In essence, what happens is that the poles of the timeline have shifted, meaning past, present, and future are all happening simultaneously. So, what you do in this moment has a capability to heal the past but create the future. Now, you could superimpose this lifetime and any other lifetimes or existences you've had, either in the past or the future. Same thing is happening right here, right now. So, whatever is happening in one dimension, you're flipping dimensions too. You're moving from dimension to dimension. So, you could be in multiple lifetimes at the same time, but also multiple dimensions at the same time. And I know I probably lost a few people with that explanation, but this is the truth. So, when you are in the present moment, you have the capability to heal the past and create the future, not only in this lifetime, but multiple lifetimes and in multiple dimensions as well. So, Sarah, know that yes, that is true. And I hope that this helped explain things a little better for you so you have a better grasp of that. And yes, I know you're still here. And remember, a lot of this may be on an unconscious level too. Okay. So just be aware of that. So, when we talk about, hidden grief, going back to what we were talking about health challenges and well-being, you know, I think I have this philosophy that I think that a lot of people who are experiencing health challenges and newer health challenges as of recent, there may be a contributing factor to something deeper within them, and it may have to do with grief. So when I work with clients these days, we actually go back and I coach them to look at some things that probably had happened earlier in their lives, where maybe they weren't allowed to fully express and resolve the grief that they had experienced, either by, they stuffed it, or they ignored it, or didn't know what to do with it, or they partially experienced it, but the essence of what they're grieving is still there, because remember, everything is energy. When you don't have the ability or capability to express it, or you partially express it, it doesn't just go away if you ignore it. It's still there, and it kind of, I would say, energetically, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And then eventually, what it does, it just moves on over from your energy field into your physical body through the endocrine and also the lymphatic system. Edgar Casey talked about that in his work over 100 years ago, which is really fascinating for people who haven't had an introduction to who he was. He was what they call the sleeping prophet. So, with that in mind, if energy isn't experienced, it continues to grow and grow. And if we continue down the same pathway that we've had as far as working with that and keeping that at bay, we contribute to it growing in other ways and forms. I just crack up because growing up in my household, my mom was not a feeler at all. Her MO for things was ignore it, it'll go away. And I remember telling her as a child, when I ignore it, it's growing bigger. So it's not going away. So I knew that I had to do something else with it. So I channeled that energy into music and really excelled at that, because that's the way I was able to move through that and release it, if you want to call that, release that energy into something creative. So, sometimes we aren't able to physically experience something, but if we're able to channel it into a different modality, it kind of sets off um, the intensity of, or at least lets the pressure off, considering that maybe it's in a pressure cooker. When you release the pressure, a lot of the pressure goes away, and so things settle down. But if we're like this pressure cooker, that where the pressure valve is just, you know continuing to build and build and build, it's gotta go someplace. So if you're able to express your emotions or channel it into something creative like journaling, or maybe even writing, journaling, listening to music, creating art, that's always a better thing as well to consider. Also, sometimes when we have like this hidden grief, or this that's been running the show, maybe sometimes we just can't seem to make uh decisions, or we're making decisions that are not the ones that we want, or maybe we start going into doing some unhealthy coping mechanisms, like maybe we start binge eating or drinking, or start creating addictions for ourselves. I also think maybe the addictions, if you go deeper, there might be some hidden grief that's running the show with that too. That's something to think about, something to ponder. Especially if we have problems with, we have a major obesity problem here in the United States, and I'm wondering how much of that is due to hidden grief that has not been resolved, that is unconscious, and it's driving the show for a lot of people. There's increased risk of cardiovascular problems too, because when we think about hidden grief and we don't deal with it, sometimes it's like the heartbreak that we never really allow ourselves to acknowledge, or we hold a grudge and to somebody else and we block ourselves. I'm a firm believer that when people have cardiovascular stuff going on, there's a lot of hidden grief, that or unresolved grief that has not been addressed. And by going deeper, we may be able to assist people with that. I think one of my most favorite stories to share, and it's really not a favorite story, but it's something that I've observed over my career being in the healthcare industry, especially in the surgical realm. Did you know that when patients have cabbage surgeries, that they go through a period of depression after they have their bypass surgery? And I often wondered why that was so. And so I got the insight from an energetic perspective from my higher guides as to what was going on. And this is going to be interesting because oftentimes people who've had issues with, you know, um, cardiac stuff, usually there's a blockage energetically in their heart space, meaning that it could have been something from, a trauma, a loss, maybe even unforgiveness, but there's a block there. So what happens over time, the block comes into the physical body, creates blockages in the heart. So the person gets a bypass surgery. So guess what? Now there's being nourishment, and the physical heart is no longer blocked, but the energy is still there. So the person is experiencing all the emotions that they probably had stuffed, because the heart is able to be complete and whole, but the energetic debris is still there. So it's like they're needing to look at maybe why they were feeling the way they did before they had to have the bypass, and maybe it's an opportunity for them to heal that. But I really got that insight, and I feel that when we have surgeries and we we either fix something, the energetic debris is still there. And if we don't choose to look at that, heal that, and experience that, and, for what it is, that sometimes we could recreate things for ourselves as well. So, it's been an interesting segment talking about things that can cause people to physical things and mental things that could cause people to have if they have this hidden grief. So when we return to our last segment, we're going to talk about 5 things that people can do to address hidden grief, and particularly during the holiday season, because we're amongst that right now. So you've been listening to the Dr. Dolores Show. I'm Dr. Dolores Fazzino, nurse practitioner, medical intuitive, and energy whisperer. And we're on the Inspired Choices Network. And when we come back, we will talk more about how you could maneuver through hidden grief.
Do you trust your instincts? Many of us don't. Yet this is the key to connecting to your innate healer within and your intuition. Tune in to the Dr. Dolores Show with nurse practitioner, medical intuitive, and energy whisperer, Dr. Dolores Fazzino, to receive insights and tools to realign with your inner wisdom for lasting health and true wellness. Listen for the Dr. Dolores Show, Wednesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central, 1 p.m. Mountain, 12 p.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. This is the Dr. Dolores Show with Dr. Dolores Fazzino, nurse practitioner, medical intuitive, and energy whisperer. To participate in the program, join the live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also send an email to Dolores at drdoloresfazzino.com. Now, back to the program.
Well, welcome back, everybody. You're listening to the Dr. Dolores Show. I'm Dr. Dolores Fazzino, nurse practitioner, medical intuitive, and energy whisperer, and we're on the Inspired Choices Network. And we've been talking today about hidden grief and how to maneuver through that. And, through our episode or our segments today, we talked about, what hidden grief could be, if it's like PTSD, or is it? And we also talked about how it could affect your body, mind, and soul, and how it manifests in our body and creates our health challenges for us as well. We have to remember that things are interconnected in ways you have no idea. And you know what? This is going to be one of those abstract concepts that are, some people are going to try to wrap their mind around, but I invite you to have an open mind and look at it from this perspective as well. So before we went to our last break, I told you that I was going to share 5 top things to address hidden grief, particularly during the holiday season, which we are amongst right now. So happy holidays, everybody. I think the most important thing to do is to acknowledge and validate your feelings. Recognize and accept that it's okay to feel a range of emotions, including grief during the holidays. Give yourself permission to experience and express these emotions without judgment, and acknowledge that grief is a natural response to loss. And loss, like I said, could be anything. It could be loss of a pet, loss of a loved one. It's funny because I'm doing a segue here. It's like we cry sometimes more for our 4-legged and winged pets than we do for human beings, and it's because of that unconditional love and acceptance that they carry, and they that just carries through their essence. Acknowledge and validate your feelings, just so important. Just acknowledge that you're not feeling 100%, and it's okay. You don't have to hide. You don't have to crawl under a rock. It's sometimes just verbalizing it is enough to shift it. Okay. Create new traditions and modify existing ones. If things are triggering you in your holiday episodes here, I invite you to just sit with that and just ask the question to yourself, why is that so? Without judging or criticizing it, just allow it to flow out. And I think you will find some huge insights. You might get a flashback of something. You might think about something you haven't thought about in like eons. And maybe this has something to do with that. Those are like little hints that the universe is giving to you. Trust your intuition on that. It's always correct. just, a little thing here. Holidays, there's always traditions around holidays, and they could be very challenging, especially if somebody's grieving. And, consider creating new, you know, traditions. Who said that we always have to do the same things over and over again? I think the beauty of being in the present moment is creating something new that is going to be so insightful to where you're going. Seek support. This is not the time to be the Lone Ranger. Reach out to people. Share your feelings with others who understand and have experienced similar losses, for they could provide comfort and validation for you. If needed, consider professional support from somebody who specializes in, grief recovery and stuff like that. Most important, practice self-care. It's so important to take care of your physical and emotional well-being, and this definitely involves getting more sleep, eating nourishing foods, exercising, engaging in activities that bring you joy. It's essential to prioritize self-care during times of grief, and the holidays can be particularly challenging. So, yes, if you're one of those people that puts everybody else first on their list and you are maybe on your last, or you're not even on your list, this is for you. Self-care, self-care, self-care. You are important enough to take care of yourself. And if you don't, you're going to pay the consequences later. And then, most importantly, set realistic expectations, because too often, how many of us put too much on our plate? It's like we went through the buffet line and everything's delicious. We loaded up our plate and it's just like, I can't eat all this stuff. So it's like, you end up wasting a lot of things. Please invite yourself. If it's not a hell yes to do something, please don't do it, because there's nothing worse than showing up half baked to something where you really don't want to be there, and it's a chore or a burden, and it just sets a real dampening energy to everybody else. If you're not 100% into it, just say that I choose to do self-care today, and I'm going to pull myself out and just spend time with myself. It's okay to do that. Give yourself permission. So, just as a ending thing, everybody goes through grief differently. And when we're in it, it sucks. But let me tell you, the most rewarding thing you could do for yourself is just go a little deeper and see the gifts that are there for you. You will not be disappointed. So, next week, we start our 4-episode series called The Empath's Holiday Haven. And we're going to be talking about things that those of us who are highly sensitive, empaths, and intuitives can do so we could have a wonderful holiday season. So we're going to join us as we guide empaths, intuitives, and highly sensitive individuals through the festive seasoning. Yes, it is seasoning, offering insights, tips, and practices to ensure an authentic and harmonious experience with the focus on self-care and sensitivity. The Empath's Holiday Haven is your trusted companion for a balanced and joyful holiday season. Discover expert advice and stories around self-care and authenticity and sensitivity. So, we are going to spend 4 episodes just going through that whole thing, to how to make the holiday season an enriching experience for you. So, circling back to what we're talking about today with the hidden grief and stuff, you know what? The most important thing to remember is just to be kind to yourself. You know, Sometimes we're just so hard on ourselves that, just a little kindness, self-kindness, self-appreciation, and valuing and respecting who you are go a long way. Just remember, you are worth it. You really are. And it's time to step into your sovereign right and claim that for yourselves. When you start digging deeper and going into your hidden grief and healing that, your life is going to be more beautiful and amazing than you could ever imagine. So take care, and I'll see you next week. Have a great time. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Dr. Dolores Show. Dr. Dolores returns Wednesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central, 1 p.m. Mountain, 12 p.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. Until then, remember to be kind to yourself and create your best life. You are worth it.